Huddersfield Town. The most famous goal of Chris Billy's life.
Is this the moment for Lee Fowler? It is. Take your place in Division 2, Huddersfield Town.
Thank you.
Champion Steve Simonson's boots now. He's missed. Steve Simonson clears the flame of the goal and collapses in a heap of tears. Huddersfield Town are promoted.
Mustafa Schindler has a chance to write his name in Huddersfield Town legend. And he takes that chance!
Hello and welcome back to the Andy Takes That Chance podcast. This week, we're looking to the latest again down in HD1. Mark Fotheringham partakes in a little bit of yut shaming, and there are two games for us to reflect on this week in Preston North End and Middlesbrough. The Middlesbrough game, according to an independent observer, was one of the most boring games they'd ever seen in their lives. And I say it must be the first time they've caught us in years, if that was the topic of conversation.
Well, that Keith Downey was a big Newcastle
Downey fella.
fan.
That's the one.
He's just a proper wind-up, mate. He's a Newcastle United guy, and everyone was just falling for it. But sorry to knock your intro there, mate. I just thought it was embarrassing. And
welcome back, mate. It's been a while since you've ruined one of those.
No, Town fans are like, we're not asked for it anymore and want to slag Fulham off for using it as badge of honour. The game wasn't half as bad as he said. He's the shit.
I didn't think so.
Just because his team's been taken over by Saudi money, mate, and that is up to like fourth in the league. You know, we can't all be taken over by dirty cash. So yeah, it's
funny how moral. It is funny how morals go out the window, isn't it? When football's
pathetic,
involved,
mate. What a tosser he is.
Right, let's carry on with the intro. If they can keep their eyes open this week, I've got the rhyming duo of Pos and Cos. Right, guys, this episode, as always, is sponsored by Magic Rock Brewing. So thank you very much to Magic Rock for their continued sponsorship of the podcast. And if you want to fancy something coming up to Christmas now, isn't it? So if you fancy a couple of things online, head to magicrockbrewing.com, use our code of AHTTC10, and you'll get 10% off. And I think you get free delivery over, I think it's £45 now. So all in all, not too bad. Not too bad. And not too bad, I guess, is Middlesbrough 0, Huddersfield Town 0. I think we should just get fired straight into this one. Probably spend about 10 seconds on Preston because it's probably not worth the time. But firstly, thanks to the people that are currently watching us online at the minute. So good evening to everybody that's doing that. Cozzy, you were there at the Riverside. Your thoughts on the game, but take us through the lineup, because obviously I know you don't like talking tactics. Bit of a Mark Fotheringham there. I don't particularly like talking tactics, but there was a change in shape, wasn't there? We were gone from 3-5-2 to I think Mark Fotheringham described it as more of a 4-3-3, but it looked a little bit more 4-2-3-1 with Redoni a bit more advanced. But I thought we looked a lot more comfortable in that shape. I thought defensively, we barring the first 20 minutes where Middlesbrough really rattled us, didn't they? They came at us and ran out of steam quite quickly. But I think some of that is due to the shape that we held and defensively how obstinate we were going forward after that spell. And all in all, not too bad, mate.
Yeah, good performance really, and that as well. It's really weird. Obviously, I was on Radio Leeds again last night, but I kind of my emotions were all over the shop last night, because I wanted to. Yes, it's a solid point, and we stopped the rot, but I just couldn't help thinking that we'd missed a trick, Matt, and we'd missed some big chances, and they were garbage. They were absolutely garbage, and the longer the game went on, the worse that Middlesbrough got. They couldn't even string any passes together second half. I feel it's 2 points dropped, and I was saying to Johnny, because he hadn't interviewed Fotheringham at that point, I said he's going to come on after and say that. That's just a good point and a solid performance, and with something to build on. But I just couldn't help looking up at them scores, mate, at the end when it flashed up on that scoreboard as we were walking out, and seeing 4 goals scored by Blackpool, 4 goals scored by Hull City, and I'm thinking we need to get some wins under his belt. It felt 2 points. I felt a bit down about it, and God, I've thrown a few things at you there, but I think the most disappointing thing for me about it was seen as time waste. Someone commented at the pub after the game and says, mate, it's the shittest Middlesbrough team that we've ever had for some time. We were absolute garbage, And there you are, time wasting in the last 10 minutes to grab your point. What are you doing? You're bottom of the league. And, I just said, mate, I couldn't agree more. I could not agree more with that. I'm thinking, what are we doing? Let's go for it. Let's try and win the game. Maybe that's why I'm not a coach, guys, and not into the tactics and take the point and this, that, and the other. But I just couldn't. I just thought it would have wasted game against a poor team, a bit like Rotherham last week. And we're going to come up against a lot harder teams than that. That would have won to win. And to see Nichols again pissing about, moving it from one side to the other, and then when the ball's going out of the play, the ball boy throws it back and he deliberately drops it. Guys, we're at Middlesbrough. Let's use Fotheringham's. Guys, we're at Middlesbrough away. We're absolute dross.
Listen,
we're not Norwich. We're not at Sheffield United, and we will know when we're there, by the way, because we'll be picking the ball out of our net a lot. So I thought it was embarrassing, that, to be honest, mate. But yeah, so I walked out of there a bit down and driving home, thinking, is that a good point? And my conclusion was, no, it's not, because they were rubbish.
Okay, well, I'll try and be the devil's advocate and work against that. I know you're saying it's not Sheffield United and Norwich, and neither are we. That's the point, really. Just for some context, that's the first clean sheet we've kept away from home this season. It's only our second point as well, and it shows how diabolical we are away from home. I take the point that what you're saying. Obviously, Town took the point, didn't they? I take the point of what you're saying. I thought Middlesbrough, after 20 minutes, were there to be beaten as well. I felt like they ran out of ideas after 20 minutes, and on another day, I want to talk about our striking options as well just after. But before we get into that, I thought Danny Ward should have scored twice. I thought he had two really good presentable opportunities. The first one, he should have got something on when Sorba Thomas slid it across. How good was Sorba Thomas, by the way? I thought he was a very good first 60. I think he tailed off a bit second half, but I thought first half he was excellent.
I thought the best player on both sides, mate, not just ours.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought Sorba was back to something like. Which is great for us because we need him, but we are struggling to score goals. I don't think there's any crux about that. We've been playing with two strikers up front and a man behind, and I know we got three at Luton, but we had Luton put the ball in the net for us twice, and the other was a penalty.
Matt, doesn't it just show though that, so just putting in there, but get two up, all this bollocks, like last year when we were playing one up front.
Gerrit Forward, you mean?
Yeah, no, this two up front, like. We've got two up front now, and it's doing absolutely. We look like slightly to score any goals and any time. So I think
it's absolute bollocks. I think Town fans. No, I'm not going to say Town fans, but some English football fans seem to think two up front some kind of silver bullet to scoring goals. It's not. It's bollocks. And if anything, 4-4-2 was designed as an actual defensive shape, not an attacking shape. It was designed for long ball football, for big man, little man up front, and it's. When people go on about 4-4-2, I just roll my eyes. And I think after the Wagner years, there's a lot less of that. I think prior to the Wagner years, and now we've seen success with different shapes and systems, and we've seen how Carlos does. I think there's a lot across the board. I think there's a lot more acceptance of one striker systems at Huddersfield. But prior to that, it was a bit of a nightmare. I still remember days when Lee Clark played Danny Ward up front with. I think it was Jordan Rhodes, and because Danny Ward was seen as a winger, there was a huge furore afterwards. I think it was Tranmere at home, pause, and me and you sat together, and it was 0-0 at home to Tranmere, and there was a massive furore after that. But I think in terms of the game itself, I thought Town were quite solid, and we've lost to Preston. That performance against Preston was absolutely diabolical. I know you didn't quite catch it all, did you, Cozzy? But it was honestly a really, really shit performance. Because he's frozen. I don't know if he's still there. But, that game was awful. We needed to respond from that with just something, anything. And for me, we're not going to score a lot of goals, and I'm going to come on to that in a minute, but defensively was what we built on last season, Pause. The defence, Tom Lees, or Tom Bundesliga, as Mark Fotheringham is now hinting. He's saying...
He's not tall enough.
Yeah, if he was a few inches taller, he would have played Bundesliga. And do you know what? There's a lot of people mocking that online. But when I sort of sit and think about that, I don't think it's too far from the mark, really, because Tom Lees was a top-end championship defender, wasn't he, at Sheffield Wednesday? And he was half decent at Leeds before he was young and moved on. And had Sheffield Wednesday been promoted, he would have played Premier League football. He'd have been playing Premier League football this season if we'd have gone up. And I think the Bundesliga at the bottom end is weaker than the Premier League. So I don't think it's too far-fetched had the Tom Lees of 3-4 years ago would or possibly could have played if he was a bit tall. I don't think it's as wild as what some people think it is. But defensively, mate, you were a centre back. I thought Town's setup was understandable.
Yeah, I think to be fair to Cozzy in regards to his earlier comments about should have gone for it, I always feel that it's massively different when you're in stadium. You get a bit of a feel to it. But I agree with you, Matt. I think that if you take that immediate emotion out of it, as you say, we're not on the greatest of runs. We've had a very bad performance going into that Middlesbrough game, and I can see with why 10, 15 minutes to go we did see it out. Shall we? We didn't overcommit, and I dare say that if we did overcommit and ended up losing 1-0, the majority of people would be frothing that, why didn't we just keep it tight? Why didn't we take the point and go back? Because looking at the league table as it stands at the moment, a win for Middlesbrough puts them, a fair way in front of us. And by just keeping a point against somebody else, a little bit higher up, maybe not as worthwhile, but I do think a point against Middlesbrough, with them being kind of, 5 points in front of us. If they win that, obviously they then go 8, and that's at least 3 wins. So I think in overall context, while it's frustrating that potentially we had an opportunity to take the 3, I'm a big advocate of going to win as many games as you can, but sometimes you have just got to play sensible, not just in that particular 90 minutes, but in the context of the season. If you're looking at that league in Middlesbrough, they're on 18 now, so what would they have gone? 18, 19, 20, and we'd have been on 12. You're 8 points behind them. It's a long way. It seems a lot longer to pull that back. It wins, whereas at the moment it's 5 and only 2 wins. So overcommitting in the last 10 away from home, you might get it, but you also might lose it. And I think, as I say, because he's actually, he's in the stadium, he's taken the time to travel up there, he's paid the money. It's a lot different view to somebody like myself who kind of,
$33.50, not to be sniffed at. It's a lot of money, isn't it? Cause you're back now, so you're back in the room.
But yeah, I think looking at the way that the game went, they came at us, as you say, Matt, first 20 minutes or so. We kind of, once we got a foothold and saw that out, I agree with you. I think they reminded me a little bit of Town at times last year, whereas in that first 20 minutes, they tried everything that they had available and then didn't get out, and then kind of struggled to motivate themselves or be creative and think of ways to break us down. And we kind of came back into it that sort of back end at second half and early first half. We kind of had much more at the ball. We looked a little bit more lively. It evened itself out, obviously, and then they came strong towards the back end, but never really troubled us. A couple of incidents, a couple of penalty shouts, maybe that on another day they get.
I think we have to say we were very, very fortunate, weren't we, with the Leeds challenge. That was a penalty.
I've seen that a few times. I went with you. I've got to be brutally honest. When I said it was a penalty, I didn't think it was when I saw them replays. I didn't. I've watched it back a lot of times. Do you
think he stands on his foot?
No, I don't.
Okay.
But
sack it. Jeremy Simpson was 4th official, so never mind.
At the time, I thought it died. It wasn't really a dive. What it were like? Did he stood on his foot or?
Well, there was a situation just before with Duncan Watmore where he went down just outside the box, and it was a pathetic, over-elaborate dive, hands in the air, very little contact. So I'm just wondering if he hadn't have done that, or hadn't have sort of looked for that contact previously, and the referee's probably gone, "Oh, he's doing it again. I've given the last one. I'm going to ignore this one." So I think there was maybe a bit of that, but I take the point as well. I think the other thing to consider as well. I'm just going to mute you a second. Pause because there's just a little bit of feedback. But I think the point as well is that Huddersfield Town are bottom of the league, where we're now there's a buffer zone, isn't there? Sort of, which is now starting to appear. I think it's 5 points from safety, isn't it? And all of a sudden, draws become not good enough. I know we're early in the season, but at some stage, I think in the long term, draws aren't good enough. We need to pick up some wins, and we'll talk about the run to the World Cup in a couple of minutes as well. But I think in the immediacy of losing to Preston and Rotherham, a point to get you to sort of reset and get back pushing in the right direction isn't a bad thing, especially away at Middlesbrough, which is a place we won last season, but not since 1986 before that. So we never particularly do well there. And I know superstitions, etc., really nonsense. But Middlesbrough's a tough place to go. They've got good players. They're a good side. I think they're a good manager away from flipping them upside down. I think everybody had Middlesbrough, or a lot of people had Middlesbrough in the top 2 this year, never mind playoffs. So I don't think it's a bad point in context, in terms of going away to Middlesbrough.
They couldn't even string to a pass. That Zach Steffen was garbage, mate. Garbage. Look at the way he fumbled Radoni's pathetic little drive and that as well. He were awful in the air from any corners, and we just decided to not really shoot anymore after about like 50 minutes and stuff. It's so frustrating, and they couldn't even pass to each other later on in the game and that as well. I get what you're saying, but they were so bad. I think you've just got to take that. I know what you're saying before the game. If Middlesbrough played well and in time they might fly up the league, but my eyes are telling me, and I didn't have much to drink, to be honest, because I drove. But
are you sure? We saw the pictures of the pubs and the Madry.
Yeah, well, one, mate, only one. Only one for the Instagram, mate. But
all right.
Honestly, it's really weird because I did feel it like kind of when the whistle went, yeah, it was a good point, but as soon as I saw the other results, and then I'm thinking,
when you look at the table, I think in the context of the game and going to Middlesbrough, a point's all right, but when you look at the table, you're going, shit, actually, we could have done with winning that. And I think that's where the conflict is, isn't it, really? Because a win for us, Coventry winning and Blackpool are going mad at the minute. And
well, you know what, Matt, if Middlesbrough, because they did start off okay, to be fair, but if they'd have kind of done that 90 minutes and we'd have, it had stood on his head, keeper, and you're walking out there thinking, yeah, we're at a tough place, it's a good job, but I just felt they were worse than Rotherham easily on the day, and they're surely going to improve on that. But yeah, no, I suppose if we beat Millwall next Saturday, there's a big if in it that it's good. 4 points is a good one. But I thought we missed a trick yesterday, mate. But then again, what options has he got on the bench? Really, where's his other? Yeah. It's like for like. I mean, obviously you're going to move on to the strikers, but it just
that's my.
Where's his ammunition? And Tino's a big miss, mate, for us. He's such a big miss because he's a maverick who can do something different. There's only Thomas really, and after that, you're struggling, aren't you, to see any bit of magic?
You could do with Pat Jones as well, couldn't you, just for something different, young and exuberance, can't you? But
the way you talked about Pat Jones, it'd be interesting to see where he's going to play, Matt, because it feels like
left wing.
He talks about
left wing, Sauber. All right, maybe in a two, maybe not in a one.
He's talking about a striker that kind of feels like a striker.
Well, do you know what? Actually, thinking about that, cause Pat Jones is quick. He's lightning. Is Pat Jones. So on the counter away from home, you can you put the ball over the top and he's on it. But let's read out a couple of comments we've got from YouTube about the game, and we'll move on to something I want to talk about, which is Huddersfield Town's striking options. Dom Campbell says, whilst it wasn't a brilliant game, I think it's a solid away point and something to build on, and we needed a clean sheet. I think that was my point, really, is that it could have been worse. Leo says, both teams were poor. Good point, but we need to back this up with wins at home. Bez 5678 says, Borough were crap, but they were still better than us, in my honest opinion. Jerry Hinnon says, felt worse after the Preston game than any game since the 2-3 loss to Wickham in February 21. Do you remember that loss to Wickham? That was bad, wasn't it? Diabolical is a good word for that showing. There's a man who says diabolical like no one else, and that's Mick Morgan, isn't it, Cozzy? That were diabolical from
you know what? I want
Castleford commentator.
I didn't see any of the game. I didn't see any of the highlights,
mate. Honestly,
but obviously, the
Jesus Christ, Preston.
The vitriol from my feed on stuff, looking at stuff when I went in Spain, were off the scale. I was getting messages that were like, if Jerry says it's like the Wickham game, then that's all. So you could tell,
mate, honestly, it was shite.
Yeah, so I was shite. Baggage going in there, but
we'll talk about it in a minute. But Bez also says, to be fair to Fotheringham, we have to start somewhere, and that is getting the defence right. More clean sheets and nicking a goal might get us a few wins. I think that's a fair point. So the next thing I want to talk about is our strikers. We're struggling, in my opinion, up front. Danny Ward, Jordan Rhodes did great things last year, to be fair to both of them. Danny Ward was outstanding last year, wasn't he? He was rightfully in the conversation for Player of the Year, but he picked an injury up, didn't he, around April time? And he came back and didn't quite look the same, did he? There was, I think, was it against Bristol City maybe, where he went off towards the end of last season. We weren't sure whether he was going to play in the playoffs or not. And he just, in the playoff final as well, mobility-wise, he wasn't quite where he was earlier in the season. And it seems for me that it's kind of carried on a little bit into this season. He doesn't quite look as sharp, maybe, as what he was last year, which is a real shame. He still scored 3 goals, I think, this season, but he's got 1 in his last 12 appearances. Jordan Rhodes was great last year, and he was a little bit sharp, quite sharp earlier this season. And there's been the odd performance where I think Jordan's link play and back to goal work is severely underrated. But he's now got none in his last 4 and 2 in his last 12. So if you tally them all together, if you tally them both together, that's 3 goals in 24 appearances from 2 strikers, and that's, any way you slice it, it's not really good enough at the minute. And it's not just the goals either. We're watching the game against Middlesbrough, and I think it's the last 20 minutes where we're trying to put the ball forward and the ball is constantly coming back, and that's because Jordan Rhodes and Danny Ward before them are just not the kind of striker that can stretch play effectively away from home either. Neither of them have electric pace. Neither of them are really sort of brute strength. They're both nice link strikers and semi-decent in the box. Quite similar. And this is why I was adamant, if you like, before that as a partnership, they don't really work together. I know Mark Fotheringham kiboshed that, didn't he, and said they could, but I still don't think as a partnership they're right for each other. And we're struggling with Kieran Phillips at the minute is out on loan at Morecambe. He's actually started playing quite well at Morecambe. He's started to physically develop, and a lot of the things I'm seeing in the highlights, he's looking sharp as well. But even if we say bring him back after the World Cup, I don't quite think he's ready for this level. Kean Harrett's not really doing anything at Bradford. I think there was an issue there, wasn't he, with him opening his mouth a bit. We all open our mouth from time to time about Bradford, don't we, Cozzy? So, But,
we're not paid by him. Oh, we're not.
No. And then we've got Tyrese Simpson as well, who's, to be fair, I understand why the club have signed Tyrese Simpson despite the injury. He's a long-term target, a long-term development plan. So I get why they've signed him. Last year they missed out on, it was the year before, wasn't it, on Adebayo, about 18 months ago, on Adebayo from Walsall, who's doing well at Luton. So I can see the club thinking, do you know what, we need to get this over the line and work with him long-term. Otherwise, there's a chance if we wait till January, we could miss out, etc. And that injury came up, didn't it, when they did the scans, etc., with the medical. So I understand why they've gone through with that. I understand why they've signed him, and it's fine. But we're now starting to look a little bit worn up there. Statistically, we're not doing particularly well. We're struggling to get a foothold at times in the final third. We look at the game against Preston, and Town has stood, and honestly, tactically, it is one of the biggest shit shows I've ever seen in my life, that Preston game. You had 5 defenders at the back. You've got Ollie Turton still there as a left centre-back, which I wasn't particularly keen on anyway. And none of the defenders are driving forward with the ball into the space that Preston are happy to give up. You've got your wing-backs pushed right up, and you've got literally a line of 5 against a line of 7. And all it ended up was, it was like that Lee Clark game for Huddersfield against Sheffield United. Do you remember, Pos, where we lost at home? And it was the last Lee Clark, and it was just essentially direct long balls into the box, and you could see them coming a mile off, and Preston were just absolutely gobbling them up. And again, there you've got nothing from Huddersfield, and for me, we've got a couple of issues up front in terms of we don't quite have, and Cossy's quite mentioned Tino quite rightly, and Tino can change the dynamic of that somewhat. But we just look like we are really struggling for ideas up front at the minute. We're struggling to get Ward and Rhodes into good goal-scoring positions. Ward has missed a couple, I know, at the weekend. But last year, his shots-to-goals ratio was up there with Mitrovic. He was that good last year in terms of his shot conversion, that we're just not creating enough for these two guys, and they can't create things for themselves because they're just not that type of player. So for me, it's our current area of weakness, and it worries me. And this is why I was quite pleased to see Mark Fotheringham go back to defence rather than try and outscore oppositions, because defensively we're quite decent. Hellick's quite decent at what he does. Very ungainly, but he's quite decent defensively. Tom Lees is good at what he does. Nakayama's got a lot of strength work to do, I think, physically at this level, and he's admitted that in an interview a couple of weeks ago, but he's all right. So defensively, I think we're quite solid, or can be quite solid. Lee Nichols, best goalkeeper in the league last year. So I think that's more of our platform rather than 2 up front and a man behind, and I'm happy with that. but we still need to find a way to try and get players in behind. We still need to find a way to stretch opposition. And
No,
if we
100%.
can't do that,
Matt,
we're gonna be too easy to play against. And that's my
Johnny Buchan asked me yesterday, at this point, do you think we could go down? And I said, yeah, there's no doubt about
Yes.
it. Because 100%, Matt, that's the biggest thing, because I agree that, we're not going to outscore teams. I think the thing that worries me a lot is, like, I agree with you. I don't think Rhodes and Ward are the partnership as well. But for me, it's just it's just a shame about Tyrese Simpson, because it's almost like that bit of pace that, the opposition defenders thinking, oh God, even same with Tino thinking, what, do I back off? Do I go in there and stuff? We haven't got that now. So we're very easy to kind of defend against and that as well. And I just think goals win games. And last year, we knew pretty much we were going to be solid, and we could, we won so many games, didn't we, by the odd goal. But this year, obviously, we're never going to be like that. And I just think there's just nothing any different. And like, I mean, you've summed it up perfectly, really, there. Phillips, Sarah, get these guys back. Are they really going to make much difference? I just don't see it. Pat Jones with the one wanting, and typically get injured.
Yeah, he's more of a winger, though, isn't he?
He is,
Pat
but
Jones,
he's again a guy who scares guys.
But he's got pace. He's got
Yeah,
pace.
in Norwich, I just think of that game, mate, where their defenders were like, and their crowd, oh my God, and they were crapping the loads for like 10 minutes after and stuff. And that's what we need at the moment, whether it be Simpson, Jones, and we've just not got that. And that, for me, that is the biggest reason. If someone again asks me, do you think Huddersfield Town will go down at the moment? And from what we have at the moment, yeah, obviously, if Simpson comes in and it's hard, isn't it? Because we're going to need him to deliver straight away after an injury, and he's not exactly a prolific man. But I just think maybe it's not even his goals, mate. It's just what he'll do with his runs and his strength, and he's holding the ball up. And
absolutely nobody can run the channels at the minute. That's another thing.
We haven't got that. Dwayne Humes were like running all over the place trying to get that going, and that's not his game yesterday. But I mean, and the fullback thing is a real issue for me, mate, because like you said there, it sounded like Preston. He was a little bit better yesterday, but turning, driving forward, he kind of stops at the halfway line, and it's just like, then we pass sideways to Etienne, who he'll pass it, and it's just like the other teams are back then, and it's like, no, but then last year we were, we had people bombing on, obviously like Toffolo, Pippa to a lesser extent. We've lost that. It's not, and obviously with his attack, it's just like nothing different. And for me, that's easily the biggest worry, because I know we probably won't be as sound defensively as last year, but I still think we'd be good enough. But where are our goals? And Ward, what bad example, like yesterday, obviously missed two sitters, but it's like we're not really creating enough anyway, really. And yeah, it's a real issue, Matt, because we're going to come onto the road to kind of the World Cup, but I'm not saying we're going to be dead by then, but you're going to need a big form swing. These other teams are 19, 20 points now. Teams we were kind of thinking would be shit, like Blackpool, Birmingham, they're getting away with it from it now. And it's a massive worry, mate.
Blackpool have got Jerry Yates, and me and my mate Dev have an argument with Jerry Yates. I think he's got a nice touch, but I don't really think he's up to much at Championship level. So every time Jerry Yates goes through a purple patch, he lets me know about it. And at the minute, he's absolutely scoring for fun. And we don't have that. We don't have that striker who comes in and... do you remember like Paul Dalton? Do you remember Paul Dalton? Paul Dalton was a real sort of maverick player. And what he would do is he would come in... Yeah, but he would come in and he would win games for us in a little spell of like 8 weeks and then disappear completely for 3 months, which is kind of even.
It sounds like Tino. That. I don't know. I don't think we'll see Tino till after the World Cup, mate. From what?
No, I don't. I wouldn't have thought so.
And then, Pos, what would you do? Because I ain't got any solutions, and I don't think Matt has.
He's on mute. He's Pos. Let's unmute Pos. There you are, Pos.
I thought you'd forgotten about me then, guys. No, I think...
Who are you?
I think what you've both said, just listening in there, quite nicely, just sit and listen, actually, to be fair. You've asked what can we do? For me, there's not a lot you can do. I think Rhodes and Ward are so similar. You can't really play long ball for him to kind of hold it up. They're not that sort of player. As Matt rightly says, there's no one to run into channels, so you can't really play in behind. Danny Ward, maybe 10 years ago, kind of had a little bit of that in him, but now, obviously he's a little bit older. I think the way to go is defensively, keep it safe. A little bit like last year, really. You know, Carlos obviously identified that we didn't have really that much creativity going forward. So he made us very solid at the back. And obviously we scored a hell of a lot of set pieces last year, which were, you know, a massive way in which we scored goals. If someone asked me last year if we had much creativity going forward, I would argue that no, we didn't. Sorba Thomas is obviously still with us who can put a good ball in. There's no one central though for me that can do that can sort of unlock a defence with a bit of skill or sort of a cute through ball from sort of 20 yards out into a Rhodes or a Ward who can once in that sort of 6-yard box, 10, 12 yards out, that's where you want the ball to go. But as Cosy says, we've lost that kind of someone bombing on wide to put that cross in, or you know, that adventurousness of kind of someone sprinting through from midfield and you know, cutting one back to them and stuff like that. So I think it is a massive area of concern, and given, you know, we can't bring anyone in until January, we are really going to struggle. So it's one of those that Fotheringham came in, you know, he talked about creating this scaffolding and playing attacking football, which is great in an ideal world. But for me, we've almost got to that stage where I know it's going to sound proper negative, and you know, it definitely is, but if you can't win a game by outscoring someone, just make sure that you don't lose. And it's one of those that kind of, are we in for a lot of games like yesterday at Middlesbrough where we play almost for 0-0 and hope that we can sneak something on a break or a set piece? Because for me, who do you put up front? If you don't play Rhodes or Ward, at the moment, who plays? Because
you know what, Pos? There were occasions where
there's literally no one, is there? There's no one.
Kamara were like getting up ball, the crowd were getting mad because they're passing it back. But I was turning around to shout, "Look, who's he got to bloody pass to?"
Exactly.
Surrounded by massive fry and what? He's got no chance, mate.
I think as well with Rhodes and Ward, I mean, we labour us going forward as it is. So ball's in our sort of defensive third. We pick ball up, and Rhodes or Ward or both are kind of halfway line. You've got to make 4 or 5 passes to build it up, because you've almost got to build at their speed. You know, I know it's absolute cheese, and you know,
Holmes were trying to do something different by running kind of as like a right winger, but he ain't that, and it's just like that's how desperate we are trying to get any width, mate. Really,
you know, that sort of goal that Haaland scored yesterday. I know it's a ridiculous comparison, but how fast did he cover that ground from halfway to edge of their 18-yard box? It was one long punt. It were an out ball. We have nothing like that. We have to build slowly to get it wide to then put across it. And by the time we've done that, defences have regrouped, teams have regrouped. They've got 10 men behind the ball. We're not that great at passing and creating opportunities anyway. So, you know, the longer it takes us, the less chance we have. And I think that's bang right. The lack of goals will be a massive problem. And looking at that league already, you know, the World Cup is going to be a big turning point for us. But a lot of teams will be saying that are struggling. You know, let's get to the World Cup. Let's see what happens. We get another kind of mini pre-season. But unless... We can't even bring anyone in until after the World Cup anyway, can we? Because it's window. So, you know, it's like getting to the World Cup and seeing what can happen, but you're not going to be able to bring anyone in until after that anyway. And until, you know, January, if we don't start scoring goals, we could find ourselves pretty much already down. And I think you're right. That is the biggest new match.
The thing is, Pos, I heard him. I'm a right badger now on these press conferences, especially on Spotify and stuff, because like, and all I keep hearing these journalists saying, "Well, Mark, you know, get to World Cup," because obviously they're buying into his training. This and training that's just like you'll get your group up obviously from Sauber and trying to think anyone else we've got international, but you know, and then you'll be able to get with them, and it's almost like he's just going to make it all sort of magic, and we're going to like be without an attacking superpower. I just don't see that, you know. But maybe it can work some magic, but it's almost like we're desperate to get to that World Cup point and everything's going to be different after that, but. It'll only be different if we sign some players, or Tino and gets fit, and Simpson, you know, goes from the off. That for me, I think it's just false hope, really. That
guys, listen. Since Fotheringham came in, so Mark Fotheringham, there's 6 games, and this isn't a Mark Fotheringham problem. Like you say, it goes back to last season, really, and we're saying the conversion rates for what we had in front of goal last season was so crazy, and the amount of games we won by 1 goal last year or whatnot, and how things turned quickly. But we've scored 7 goals in 6 games. 3 of them have been own goals. 2 of them have been scored by centre-backs. One a penalty. and then one's Danny Ward from a set piece. 6 goals out of 7 have come from set pieces in the first or second phase, and the one that didn't is an own goal.
Well,
So
that
you can
Tino's,
see
mate, that magic goal against Stoke, wasn't it? Well, West Brom, I can't remember.
West Brom, yeah. I've not gone back that far. I've only gone back 6 games.
Shame, mate. That's exactly what we ain't got now.
And yeah, you're right.
Even in that game, though, when he scored that goal, literally every time we got within sort of 10 yards or even had a corner, everybody would just give it to Tino because he's just going to do that every time. And he's not going to do that every time, is he? Let's be honest. It was a well-worked goal.
We do miss him. It was, yeah. I think in a 4-2-3-1, Tino behind a striker could be a difference maker to a lot of things. He's going to frustrate because he gets the ball and he loses it a lot, but you've got to let him do that, haven't you, to get the best out of him. You've got to let him try and eventually he makes a breakthrough, doesn't he? But that's my worry really on...
Matt, here's a question for both. Are you more worried now after 6 games of Fotheringham than you were after 5 games of Schofield? That we're going to stay in the division?
Because the end of the season's closer. To be honest, every game I could become that. I was okay up until that Preston game, and that Preston game ruined me. I sat there afterwards and I was like, "Shit, we're shit," and that was a really bad game, and it was a really bad game for Mark Fotheringham. It was a bad game to be there. It was a bad game to watch, and the thing is, these bad games are going to happen, but it happened when we needed a response to the Rotherham game. And we didn't. We kind of got something worse, and it was a real knock to confidence. Was that, and that's why I'm okay with the Middlesbrough game because it's a kind of back to getting a point on the board. But that Preston game really rocked me as well, as Jerry said online, and it was honestly that bad, and tactically it was that bad, and how little idea we had was really and it was what we did on the field which really worried me. We didn't. The only thing we literally tried was to flood the box and kick it as high as possible, and that the tactics were Sunday League standard, and that is really what worried me. It was really bad.
Yeah, I think when Schofield were there, you always had that. Yeah, it's still new. Yeah. We might click, and then obviously Mark's come in and he's had 5 games, and at some point it might click. But I think that Preston game for not just yourself, but for pretty much the whole fan base, were a bit like, ooh,
oh shit!
Actually, we're not good and just playing bad. We're just bad. Do you know what I mean? Like, sometimes you go through a bit of a bad spell, and you can see us. We will pick up at some point. We're not going to be down here for all season, but I think walking out of that Preston game, I think anybody that were there that thought, "Oh, we'll be all right," is wrong.
I always thought we'd be all right. I thought at some point it'll be fine. We'll get what we need. Even when Mark Fotheringham came in, I thought, all right, we'll see how it goes. I'm sure it just needs someone just to shake things up, and then that Preston game really sort of shook my confidence. And to be honest, and I think that's why I'm all right with Middlesbrough, because that rebuilt a little bit of confidence because of how solid we were defensively. I know the first 20 minutes we were a little bit ropey, but because we were solid defensively, that gave me a little bit of hope that we've got that platform to build on and move forward. You can't build it on 2 up front and a man behind, and getting as many attacking players on the field as possible. You build it for Huddersfield Town on the defence and how obstinate we can be and how decent Lee Nichols is this year, because the strikers aren't going to do it for you, Mark. The defence is what's going to do it for you, and that's where you've got to put your faith. And for me, and I think he might have recognised that now, with the way he was
the
bigging up Tom Lees.
Right, guys, though, isn't it? We are the worst team.
We're the worst team I've seen this season.
We are.
I thought Blackpool. I genuinely thought Blackpool were crap when we played.
I think that's what worries me a lot, Matt. But
they beat us.
West Brom and Middlesbrough. West Brom and Middlesbrough. I could be wrong here, and their fans might be like watching us thinking that's bollocks. But they're bound to improve. I think we're surely going to improve, but I think they'll get out of it a lot quicker than us. And then you're looking right. Okay, who's up there? Blackpool, Birmingham. Coventry.
I think Coventry will be fine as well.
Now. Yeah, it's just.
I think people forget about Coventry that they had to play the start of their games away from home as well. So they had.
Oh, they didn't play them, did they? They got postponed.
The thing is, Paul, when you can't win
fitness issue.
6 games, 4 draws, 2 draws and 4 defeats. It's a joke, that, isn't it? Really, and it piles the pressure on your own games. And I know Fotheringham is big about the home backing, but we'll have to win our own. Have to win, and it's just like
that's why Preston was such a. That was why Preston was such a jolt as well. I mean, we beat Hull, didn't we? The whole game we deserved to win, but even then, and Hull since then have won a couple of games, and they've gone flying up the league as well. So it's just crazy of So I think that'll count as our Preston roundup, to be honest, because the game was that bad. I don't really want to get PTSD by talking about it again. So I'm going.
Let's look forward, Matthew.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to just go to see what people have been saying on YouTube about us. Christ, we've got a lot of comments here. I think we must have been talking a lot of nonsense. We've got a lot of people tapping away. Let's pick it up. So Leo says we're missing both Hogg and Tino with limited options. I think we should recall some of the loan players in January. Do we miss Hogg for you guys? I think
No, I don't.
I'm not as I think sometimes I think as a leader and as a character on the field, I think there are games where we do miss him. I think sometimes when the game's going away from us, I think like Preston, I think sometimes I know he's not going to improve the passing on the field, but I think sometimes just that organizer, that leader, just to bring and reposition people. I think.
Where would you play it? Who would you drop, Matt?
Well, this is the problem because Carlos realised last year that Jonathan Hogg is now slowing down. Shall we say? I don't want to go too far because he might hunt me down and murder me. But Jonathan Hogg's slowing down slightly, isn't he? And he's not as quick to the second ball anymore. And that midfield of him and John Russell was quite hard to watch, wasn't it? So I'm not sure. I think sitting in front of a back four is not too bad, cause to be honest, for Jonathan Hogg, or in a back five. I don't think you can put him in midfield and have him chasing players anymore. So I think he's got to have everything in front of him as well. Back to if he's facing his own goal, Hoggy, that's not a good position you want him to be in either. So you want Hoggy facing forward, driving people on, and just sort of winning that second ball and just giving it simple. And that second ball, he can't be running 10, 15 yards for because he can't get those anymore. So just have him quite close to that back line, just picking things up and setting it off and organising. And
it was good
the person that you would drop,
mate.
The person you would drop would probably have to be Kamara, and that's a shame because I think Kamara has been our best midfielder the last few weeks. Maybe not against Preston, but I thought Kamara. I think there needs to be praise for him yesterday against Middlesbrough as well because I thought Kamara obviously made the mistake, didn't he, against Preston where he got beat in the air, and I thought he was extra aggressive in everything he did against Middlesbrough, especially in the air. And I thought you could see he's taken everything on board and he's gone, right, I'm going to come back and I'm going to be better from this. And I thought he was excellent. He beat everyone in the air for me, Kamara. I haven't looked at the stats, but the eye test, I thought he was excellent, in his personal battles and duels. So that's a huge credit to Etienne Kamara. And I like him as a player a lot, but you would probably look at him and say, maybe he's the man. Oh, then again, there's different horses for courses, because you can maybe throw it in. But let's just go back to YouTube. Bez says, Harrett Phillips recalling Jan to give us options. I'm not sure they're up to sort of this level to oust Rhodes and Ward yet. So
don't forget these are young lads. Bringing them back and pin your up on a young lad to get you out of a relegation fight is
not
that's
for
what
me.
happened to Barnes, mate.
I can see why people say bring them back just because it's somebody different, but
for numbers as well,
from what I understand of these players, they're very similar to Rhodes and Ward in the way that they play anyway. So it's just like a younger version. I'm not suggesting it's a stupid idea, but to chuck someone like Kieran Phillips in a relegation battle in Championship is probably and he doesn't do well, and then all of a sudden everyone hates him and he's crap, and
it's almost a career wrecker, isn't it?
Isn't it? Yeah. It's not just for this season; it's long term for him in it as well.
Yeah. Josh Phillips. Josh says no issues with signing Simpson, but we had to get another striker in who could play immediately, even if a loan or a short term deal. Yeah, I think it's exacerbated a lot more, hasn't it, by Fotheringham playing two up front and then as not having a striker on the bench, and even converting Charles Ondo from a defender to a striker in the B team and throwing him on up front. I think it's kind of highlighted that a little bit, that we are very short in that area. But we were short last year, but we got away with it, and that's just sometimes the way it goes, isn't it?
I think the thing is, Matt, I mean, this is a shit example, and just probably me just showing off what I've seen, but the last three games before that, I saw Edinson Cavani, Antoine Griezmann and Robert Lewandowski, and the three. And what I was sat right eye up because I'm tight. I can't afford them prices below. And the one thing you notice with these guys, mate, is just the movement. It's unbelievable. Like other guys are so much bigger than them, but it's just like they just pull players out of position. They're smart. The Lewandowski unbelievable. Like he'll like be a penalty box. He'll just like peel right outside it at the D, and then guys, oh shit, he's gone out. we haven't got anything like that everywhere. Defenders are left guessing because it's so obvious what we're going to do. And like we said earlier, that's just where we're just so desperate for just something a little bit different. And I could kind of see why Charles Ondo were, brought on for them 2 games. It just is. I agree with you. I don't think like Phillips or Addett, well, certainly Addett won't get a chance now after Bradford, but they just like for like, aren't they? And it's just, we ain't got that just...
Something different. Although you're talking about elite players there, aren't you? But yeah, we don't have someone who can do... I know what you mean. Wards and Road are quite samey, aren't they, in what they do? But, why don't we just sign Lewandowski in January? That'll solve everything, wouldn't it?
Yeah, is that enough? I know.
Only got one. Let's see what else we've got. We've got... Leo says Simpson's never played at this level. We can't rely on him to hit the ground running. We might as well bring back Kevin Francis II. I think the thing is with Simpson as well is he couldn't even get in the Ipswich side either, which I think was more down to the contract situation. But so he's only had sort of half a season at League Two level. So again, pinning hopes on him in January again isn't, like you say, it's the same as Phillips and Harrott. It's not the answer really, unless he's hits the ground running in January on the training field and then you give him a go. But Frankie Fingers, what a name. Sounds like some kind of gangster. Says, let's face it, boys, we now have 31 must-win games, never a dull moment. What's your thought about Mark Fotheringham's post-match interviews? Naivety, overflowing passion, or downright stupidity? Cheers, lads. Andy Shooter. Right. Mark Fotheringham's pre- and post-match. Cozzy, you go with this because you quite like Fotheringham. I'm still trying to find the right words because I started off finding the first few of them quite refreshing and quite open, and now I'm starting to sort of not feel that way. But Cozzy, you go first because you find it quite refreshing, don't you? You find his post-match and pre-match stuff quite interesting, don't you, Mark Fotheringham? What he has to say and
I do, Matt. But he's saying the same stuff. But the trouble is, it's the same mistakes, the same questions. It's really difficult. It's quite interesting, though, to be fair, listening to the certainly the pre-match press conference, because I just think that Stephen Chicken's there. Oh God, he'll be like, I'll send the check in the post. But he's just, you can tell he's got smart questioning, mate. For example, the Radio Leeds didn't mention it a thing, but he said, there's rumours of a bust up to Jonathan Organ's manager, and then obviously he went on one did Fotheringham denying it, but obviously depends who you believe. I was speaking to people yesterday that they were saying no, that and it didn't happen, and I heard from other people it did happen. So I just don't know. But it's really hard, Matt, because I find it difficult when people criticise a guy for. I've heard people saying he needs to rein it in. So someone on another group chat today needs to rein it in and be humble and stuff.
What does he need to rein in though?
Exactly. It's like getting Neil Warnock, and I know people can say, well, there's 8 players, but Neil Warnock probably, when he started his manager career, was still a big gobshite as he is now. He's just a...
He was more of a gobshite back in the 90s.
Yeah, he probably was. But it's people's characteristics and that as well. I don't think you can complain, but I won't want him to be any different, Matt. And I think a lot of people have got issues with the fact that he's very direct and, I don't know whether it's Scottish is an issue for some people and stuff like that as well. I've heard some lines.
I wouldn't have thought so.
Rapsy Nesbitt, someone said today, Rapsy Nesbitt, we need to get rid of him. People coming out with a load of shit. But, Huddersfield folk make me laugh, some of them, because, we like it saying it as it is. So here's a guy saying as it is, and people don't like it. Why is that? I don't get it. And I didn't get it yesterday as well, where some people were booing him, and, at the end of the game, it's just and it took me a while to get it. I was thinking about car driving. I'm like, why are people booing him? It's not because of the results. Why are they booing? But then I was discussing it with a few of the people last night, and they were saying, I don't think they're booing Mark Fotheringham. It's that they're frustrated with the whole thing. It's almost like booing Dean Oil.
That was me that said that in WhatsApp.
No, but there were some other people that were saying exactly the same, Matt, and that as well, because I was sticking up for him, saying, I said, to me, it's just bullying. How can you slagging off a guy because he's coming onto the pitch, and then, people say, well, if he didn't come up pitch, where is he? And then when he is coming on, he's getting booed. Yeah. I'm thinking, this is walking back to that Sunderland Army. I've been here for 6 games. We've got a good point in Middlesbrough, and people are having a go, mate. Why? And I couldn't get my head around it last night, thinking, why are people doing that? I've never known a town manager getting this stick after 6 games. I don't get it. And we've had some diverse characters. Let's be honest. We've had some absolute people that have, God, I hated Andy Ritchie with a passion, and even Simon Grayson to a certain extent, even though he got us up. But I've never known a manager be getting this kind of angst at the moment, and I just can't put my finger on it, Matt. Why you say?
I think without being unkind to Huddersfield fans, I do think there's a bit of an identity crisis at the minute in some ways. And we talk about the expectations after the Premier League, don't we? And I just don't think Huddersfield fans quite know what we are anymore. We were told for years, weren't we, by David Wagner, Dean Hall, we're this club that are punching above its weight, punching upwards in the Championship. And I think what we've seen in the last 5 years has made us think, and I think correctly in a lot of ways, that Huddersfield Town are not this little scrappy underdog in the Championship. We're actually a decent sized Championship club. Commercially, I know you don't like commercials, Cos, but commercially, we do underachieve compared to some other clubs. But that's where we are in the country, and that's where the money's not in the area. But and I think some people had higher expectations than Mark Fotheringham. So what you get is when Dean Hoyle's not there on the pitch, or when Lee Bromby's not there on the pitch to have a go at, the next closest thing's Mark Fotheringham, and maybe it's just some kind of disappointment that we've gone down the inexperienced route when a lot of people wanted an experienced manager, and maybe it's because David Wagner was so strongly linked, and maybe people shouldn't listen to people that don't know things on Twitter when they say they do, etc., that it's going to be done, etc., etc. But people got carried away. We thought we were going to get David Wagner. At one point, I thought it might happen. And then Mark Fotheringham comes in the building, and it's like, oh, well, this isn't the bloke that was coaching the Champions League last year. So I think we've gone from having our expectations level here, and it's been reset back down to here. And I think there's a lot of people still trying to, and me included, still trying to cope with having been up here and now being back down here, if you like. And I understand it fully, and I understand why people would be frustrated with the appointment of Mark Fotheringham. And I think people just look for an outlet sometimes, don't they? And the only outlet available there was Mark Fotheringham on the pitch to be disappointed at. And it's unfair on Mark Fotheringham because he's the guy who's applied for the job and got it and wants to do well. I know it's unfair, but the club don't have, or maybe people don't feel like they have that centre point of to direct their frustration at, and I think it just happened to be Matt Fotheringham on that occasion. And like you say, I don't think it was everybody, was it? It's just a few people.
Pause. Did he come on pitch against Preston after or not? Did team come over?
Not that I remember. A couple made a kind of token gesture. I think they are the only player that I remember kind of coming over. Oh, not even the player. So the only person I remember coming over, kind of specifically towards like the crowd, were Clem. He always makes an effort to go around and kind of.
Congratulations to Clem as well. 250 games at Town, isn't it? So it's been a stalwart as Clem. He's a good guy, isn't he?
Yeah, I think he's one of those that is pivotal to the back. He kind of knows what the fans are about and what we want. And I think Matt's right. There's not been really an outlet to vent at Huddersfield Town for a while. So Fotheringham is probably the next easiest thing. Will be interesting to see if anyone venting yesterday goes to the Q&A, because I think that's probably the only opportunity that they're going to get, which I know you want to talk about, Matt, so I won't steal your thunder there. But I think you're right. I think it's a build-up of frustration for probably from Forest game at Wembley to now, in seeing how quickly the decline has come. And I dare say those that were actually against Fotheringham are probably more against Huddersfield Town at the moment. Which is understandable, which is fine. We have our method of criticism, which is on here. Some do it in a football stadium, some will do it in pub afterwards. Various ways in doing it and so forth. But I think it is a build-up of frustrations, not just a particular one-game thing yesterday against Middlesbrough. I think Fotheringham's probably aware of that as well. I don't think he'll be taking it too personally. Kind of, we're giving the old chin up one to the crowd, the old Mourinho, keep your chin up gestures, which I don't think probably help. Just come across, do your clap and kind of disappear. But he has his methods, he has his ways. He's quite a strong character. I'm sure he can take the criticism and run with it. I think he'd probably use it as a motivational tool, somebody like Matt Fotheringham. So, the more criticism that he gets, I think he'll probably be one of those that wants to improve and turn around and stick two fingers up to those that doubt him. So, in the long run, maybe it might be a good thing.
Yeah, so Matt Fotheringham's pre- and post-match conferences, those were the questions. I think I found him a little bit overly nice at first, and then he kind of found his lane, if you like, if that's the right phrase. I thought the post-match against Hull will go down in legend, won't it, with the if you coast, if you're coast, I think that will always go down, won't it? It was, I quite enjoyed that, but I could see why maybe players wouldn't. And I just felt he needed to leave that there and then get back to more benign sort of answers, and just. But he kind of went a bit further again, didn't he? And there was the Yut shaming incident, wasn't there, with Yuta Nakayama, which a lot of people really didn't like. And I think a lot of people maybe jumped on that as well because there's the rumours about the falling out with Hogg as well. So I think those people who decided to be Team Hogg, if you like, rounded a bit more on Mark Fotheringham. And to be honest,
that for me, there was
I felt bits of it were. I felt bits of it were over the top, but so I didn't mind him saying my Japanese centre back. I didn't think for a second he'd forgotten his name. I think he was just trying to make the point that this is an international footballer who's not winning a header. But I completely disagreed with the context of what he said in terms of pinning that goal on Yuta Nakayama, and I genuinely thought that was absolute bollocks. And to drop him for an incident which is completely down to organisation and sort of tactical persuasion and blame an individual for it, and then drop him and make a point by putting Ollie Turton as a left-sided centre-back and then going over the top in the praise of Turton, I just thought was completely unnecessary. I didn't mind the context of what he said about the Japanese centre-back. That was fine, by the by for me. But sort of saying individuals who make individual errors are not going to play and then blaming Nakayama for something which I personally didn't think was his fault and then making a big deal out of it. I just felt like he'd picked on somebody that was easy to pick on and dropped him, and I didn't feel it was necessary. But in terms of the context of what he'd said about him, it was fine. But in terms of the context of actually saying this goal was his fault, I didn't agree with that. There you go.
The trouble is though, Matt, you say rein it in, but this is how he is you can't ask. I find it difficult when you see not even in football, but in work, that people trying to change people's characteristics. I'm thinking, well, hang on a minute. For me, you encourage people to, that you've got them in, and it's like. But
the thing is, though, because he's been overly nice about people as well. It's not all negative and calling people out. He has been really the thing is, he's been really nice about Tom Lees this week, hasn't he? And people have had a go at him for being nice, and it's like,
but you know how it is,
Matt Fotheringham does. Yeah, well, whatever
people seize on him,
and
club will tweet out 6 things with press conference, but the people who are really against him now will tweet the one where he's like on the borderline of his comments and look at that, what a twat, and this, that, and the other. But it's frustrating. I always think keep an open mind, but some people are just not. And at the start of the press conference, remember, I thought at first, because obviously with all the anger in coming in, he did his first press conference, and I thought, oh wow, people have kind of bought into it, but they ain't anymore, mate. And his results don't seem to be much to do with it. I think if we could win next 2, I don't think people had won him. But I've just never known this of Tam before. When I think of some of the guys we've had and stuff, but people just they're just what I bet.
I think we need to remember as well, though, with Fotheringham, he's probably not had much media training. He's probably not had that sort of luxury that a lot of managers get. He's probably not used to doing interviews, and I think he's probably one of those that wears his heart on his sleeve. And you could tell with the Japanese comment, it almost looked like halfway through that sentence he kind of stumbled through his words, and it probably came out totally wrong. And I think people have just got just move on. If you don't like it, just don't listen to it. It's not really affecting your life in any way. And I think at the start, Matt, it was refreshing because we've not really had anybody like that. We've had all the typical, I'm going to ask a question. Someone's going to ask me a question. I'll answer it in the most diplomatic way possible because that's what I've been trained to do. So Fotheringham comes in and, he shoots from the hip, and everyone has, because he said, everyone's like, wow, this is a bit different. I really like this. And then after a couple of weeks, it's, I don't like this anymore because he's been horrible to people, and we're not allowed to be horrible to people anymore. And don't get me wrong,
with the league, aren't we? That's the thing. Everyone's not playing well, but
If we're sat second in league and he acts exactly the same way as he's acted so far, nobody cares. Nobody gives a rat's. But because we're bottom and it's another thing to pick up on, people do. Like Ozzy says, they jump on stuff that don't need jumping on to create a problem that there's no problem there. But people get agendas, and it's very difficult in this day and age that once you've posted that agenda on Twitter, once you've posted your opinion, you're not allowed to back down from that, or people aren't big enough to back down from that, should I say. And they've got to keep it up whether they believe it or not. No one's prepared to hold their hands up and say, do you know what? I thought this, and actually now I think this.
No, that happened with Carlos. There's still people not having
exactly.
it at the end.
It's ridiculous. And I just think people just leave the guy alone. Stop nitpicking. Who? Everybody seems to get 5 games now. There's people wanting him out, so we get rid of him, and someone else comes in and don't like him. What are you going to do? Get rid of him after 5 games? But we're going to have 20 managers a season. It's ridiculous. Just leave him to do his job. Just leave him to get on with it. If you don't like press conference, don't listen. Turn it off. Go do something else.
Matt, that needs putting in a soundbite and tweeting out tomorrow. That
I'm just actually making a note of the time. 1 minute, 1:06.
Sorry, I know we've gone massively off tangent there with this question from Andy, but I think
it's like that. Like a manager, though, I'm just slouched up. Ozzy's like proper.
It's proper, like he's all coiled, isn't he? Like a rattlesnake.
It looks like proper manager interview when everyone on Zoom and stuff. Yeah, like when doing that with us.
Let's finish through these comments. So Bez5678 says, can't expect Kamara to play 40+ games at his age. We need Hogg to take some of the pressure off of him. I agree with that, Bez. Terra72 says, Matej Vidra still on a free, would do a job, ? Possibly, but how fit is he as well? Richard Hookie says, I like Ward, but Phil Rhodes up front by himself with 3 attacking players behind him is the best way. But guys, 31 games left, not over yet. We can do it. We certainly can, Richard. Terry72, well, stay up. But Terry72 says, we know what we are. We are now a development club that only sell players. Josh Phillips says, I don't agree with booing him, but can see why people don't like Mark Fotheringham. He had me on board after Luton and Hull, but the Jutta stuff was a massive turn-off for me. Josh was not aroused by Mark Fotheringham. Dag Barnett says, the difference between Mark Fotheringham and Neil Warnock is Warnock built his team and got players he wanted when he was successful. The other issue with Mark Fotheringham is we aren't used to his style, which seems to be of a different age. He is a bit of a throwback, isn't he, Mark Fotheringham, in a lot of ways he does. And he's very different. I struggle with the coming out and looking at the subs at half-time. I have to say I struggle with that concept. But it's different. And like you say, Cozzy, when you employ Mark Fotheringham, you employ the warts and all, don't you? You employ him for what he is. I'm really struggling to get on board with him not giving team talks at half-time and sat there watching subs. Really struggling with that concept.
Are you bothered about that?
No, because it's working. Because it's obviously working, but I'm struggling to understand how against Preston, we looked like we just needed a bit of guidance, and you kind of need your guidance from your main man, don't you, to sort of get everybody realigned and refocused. And okay, maybe Paul Harsley's a really good speaker in the dressing room, and you can let Paul Harsley get on with it. Maybe Chicho can get on with it, etc. And that's fine. But it's the kind of thing an assistant manager does, isn't it? Goes out, or a coach goes out and does that,
Matt,
rather than the head coach. So it's okay he did it at Berlin, etc. when he was the assistant. That's fine. But he's the head coach now, and that's his dressing room. So
he ain't got any with him, Matt.
I just found that's the other point. You
mentioned that at the time, and I think that's a big issue at this moment because I don't.
Yeah, he's got no one that can go out at halftime and do that, or no one that not one of his men. So I understand he's doing it, but let's see how it develops, because it may be a masterstroke. What he's doing, it might not.
As long as he doesn't start doing dizzy penalties at half-time, I think we're all right. If he gets involved in that,
that'd be amazing. If he comes out and starts doing dizzy penalties, I think he'd be my favourite manager ever. That'd be amazing.
Imagine that. He was doing it on Saturday. We were 2-0 down.
Oh, here, wee man.
Bloody hell.
Yeah. That'd be brilliant. Oh, here, big man. The big yin's having a go. That'd be absolutely amazing, wouldn't it? Just doing his dizzy penalties. Yeah. Get to fuck. That'd be amazing. But let's. If you don't count properly, Rambo. I know. But yeah.
Leo, how are you?
Dag Barnett also says there are clubs of a similar size and budget who are making a much better fist of things than we are. It's not about promotion, it's about being solid. The fact we aren't is incredibly disappointing. HTFC Stan says, I think the fans are going against Fotheringham because of his comments. Calling out Jutta when he's been one of our better players has just struck some people the wrong way. Seems very old-fashioned, and yeah, I understand that. I don't think Yuta Nakayama's been one of our better players, though. Not lately. I'm not quite sold on that. I like him a lot, but I wouldn't say he's been one of our better ones recently. Terry72 says, thoughts on the QA linked to blue and white membership. Oh, here we go. This is next on the agenda. Thoughts on the Q&A linked to blue and white. Seems that Hoyle wants to force blue and white onto people that want any kind of benefit for supporting the club. Yes, I was quite outspoken. Well, not outspoken, but I was quite anti how they arranged the away priority last. I haven't forgotten that the away priority last season was down to blue and white members. I've not forgotten that, and I understand that the club need to make more money, but you can only milk the same cow so many times before you've got to look for different animals. That's a really shit analogy, isn't it? Let's move on from that. Josh is retracted. Josh, you absolute shithouse, has retracted his comment, so I haven't had a chance to read that.
Might as well get on with your blue and white.
Yeah, the last one here is Dag Barnett. Just says, if we saw some hope on the pitch, Mark Fotheringham would get more time. Let's face it, he's hardly ripped up any trees. I think this is what we say all the time, isn't it, Cozzy? Win a few games and everybody calms down. That's all it is. If we win a few games, people will.
Marsh will be out this week, I'm sure, at Leeds. And yeah,
Chesty Marsh.
After Chelsea, about a month ago, I was working, mate, that day at work, and Leeds fans were swinging the shirts down there. They were off to this, that, and the other. And now they want him out. He's same everywhere. It's just mad, isn't it? Gerrard goes and oh man, I just can't cope with the modern game. It's just mental, man. 5 games and you win 5 games, you're brilliant, and lose. Sheffield United are going to lose another 5 we out to win out there now, and people question Higginbottom. And honestly, it's just I don't get it, man.
Right. So the last thing on the agenda really is, Cos, you wanted to talk about ticket prices before we do that very quickly?
Yeah, there's one thing that just winds me up a little bit though. Middlesbrough, Sheffield Steelers ice hockey, right? They do a midweek game where they have £5 in, but they will always advertise it as £8 because it's £5. It's £2 for a booking fee and £1 for the postage. So it's £8, but they'll advertise as £8. And when you're paying £8, it's £8 for the full lot. Middlesbrough, I couldn't believe it. Like £31. I think that's bad enough. Then I rung to order it. It's like, oh yeah, it's £1.50 booking fee, sir, and £1 for posting it out. So it's not 31, it's 33.50. So advertise it at 33.50, whatever it is. I get that you can go to the ground, but just say it. It's rubbish though. It's not 31 quid. It's 33.50. Anyway, on the positive, Blackburn Rovers, brilliant. I couldn't believe it. I thought it were a misprint. I've got a funny story to tell you as well, but it won't be quick. It'll be quick, sorry. 1875 for Blackburn away. How good start? Just I just thought.
Is that the last time you went there?
I went with 0-0 with Neil last year when we put that with a great point. But this is funny, right? So last week I went towards Villarreal, right, and they're 40 miles away at another ground because the ground's getting done up. So I got this ticket online, and it's a Monday night game, and it was £5. So I'm thinking, wow, that's brilliant to try and encourage all the fans to get there. £5. So gets emailed to me £5. Oh, this is brilliant. Anyway, gets to the ground and think my tests were 33 to 36. So I gets there and every single person in front of me were about 10 years old. So I'm thinking, I didn't think much of it. But so then I moved to the next turnstile, and then I thought, I'll go to the next one. And everyone else were 11 years old. Then it was a junior ticket. Oh my word. So did I think, no, I better get an adult one, or B, I'd had a few drinks and I'm from Yorkshire, thought I've already paid me €5. Mate, I got my head down, put my best for that one and got in. The oldest junior that's ever watched Villarreal. I got through turnstile and this security guy looked at me and I just mate, it doesn't matter, just move on. I got in for the €5. Oi, oi. So my tip to beat the crash crisis is get in as a junior when you're 47 years old. Oi, oi.
Oh dear, 47 and hanging around with kids is a bit of a worry there. But so there's a Q&A. So I put a tweet out about this, and some people have since come back to me with a few things on this. It's made me rethink a few things about it. So obviously at the minute, Huddersfield Town are bottom of the league. There's a lot of unhappiness. There's a lot of questions that people want to ask. And in the July board update, Dean Hoyle promised there will be an opportunity to ask questions. There'll be a Q&A. And there was no it wasn't explicitly said it would be Q&A to a specific set of fans, etc. So, and then the first time I heard about this was at Preston at half-time, where Rambo, I think anybody that sits in the stadium at Huddersfield will have some kind of audio issue, so you can't always pick everything up by the PA system because it's not the best. And he mentioned that it will be blue and white members only in the suite. And I've been looking at Huddersfield Town for them to tweet something, not seeing anything. And then I had a search on the website, and there's a story sort of which in the news section, sort of halfway down, where it's going to be coming up in November. It's locked, paywalled, if you like. That was the phrase I used, to blue and white members only. Mark Fotheringham will be there, Dean Hall will be there, Lee Bromby will be there. And it had limited numbers, I think about 100 people or so, which isn't bad. But from what I can see, it was tweeted by the promotions account, which has got a couple of thousand followers. I missed it completely on the 12th of October. Nobody liked it, nobody commented, nobody retweeted. So it kind of went under the radar a little bit. So, and the first time I checked online, it sold out. So for me, why I'm slightly unhappy with this is because it feels like anybody who's a Blue and White Foundation member, or it feels like the more money you pay the club, the more sort of access you get. And I'm not really keen on that, to be honest. I don't feel that that's right. We talk about cost of living crises. We talk about the area not being particularly flush with cash. So it doesn't feel right when you say whoever pays the most can get more. And I know the world works, commercials. I know everything works like that now, but it just felt wrong to firstly paywall such an important event, and such an event where people are really keen on voicing an opinion and getting answers, to a demographic of fan who have paid a little bit more. I'm trying very carefully to word how I say this because I don't want to offend anybody who's a Blue and White Foundation member or anybody who's not. But it just felt wrong to me that there's been a very quiet approach to this, and it felt like they'd snuck this, not snuck it, but quietly pushed this through. And then by the time a lot of people have found out, it's sold out. So it felt a little bit disingenuous in some ways that this Q&A won't happen for, I think, around about 15,000 season ticket holders won't be able to gain access. And I know there was a non-members fee that you could pay for £10, which I only saw once it had sold out, which is fine. I am a Blue and White Foundation member, I was, so this isn't such a problem for me, but I just felt like Huddersfield Town fans have so many questions at the minute. They want answers to certain things. People that ask questions tend not to be Blue and White Foundation members a lot of the time. And to sort of lock it down to a specific demographic or a small demographic just felt a bit wrong to me, Poz. I don't know how you feel about it. I've waffled a lot then. I don't think I've quite got the point over that I wanted to. But for me, it just felt like it should have been a more open and inclusive Q&A because of the importance of it, rather than locking it away behind a couple of Blue and White Foundation members.
Yeah, I think you're right, Matt. I think it was one of them things I saw on Twitter that it was happening, and I'd not seen anything kind of like from the main HDFC account. And as you said, I think it has just been something that's been snuck on through back door, maybe, possibly for the reasons that the club know that if they do open it up, they may come under fire at that particular Q&A. I remember when Wagner took over, they had it at Millbridge. I remember Danny Cowley and Nicky Cowley coming to Gas Club. Carlos recently came to Magic Rock, all open to anybody and everybody who wanted to attend. And it seems to me that we're moving away from that. They redid the priority. And these little things, they can soon snowball, can't they? And especially when you're not playing particularly well. Again, if you top at league and they introduce this, nobody's really that bothered. But when things are going not so well, you need to keep your fan base on side. And I agree with you, Matt. There's probably a lot of questions that a lot of people have, and they're not going to be able to get that opportunity to go and ask. It's almost like, as you say, the Blue and White Foundation members tend to be those that that maybe are not as vocal in the displeasure at the club, and the club maybe feel that they might get an easy ride if that's the sort of audience that they get. It would be nice to have it open to everybody. The club have made that decision, and I'm sure the questions that get asked will be, suitable for such an event. But it is such a shame. I don't know. Percentage-wise, I'd probably guess that 80% at least are Blue and White Foundation members. There's no the priority thing for away games is not needed now. So apart from maybe events like this, there's probably not.
I think there's about 2,000 Blue and White Foundation members out of 16, 17,000 season. Well, about 15,000 season ticket holders now, isn't it?
75%-ish then maybe.
You do the maths.
I think the way that they went about it, like you say, Matt, were probably a little bit, I won't say contrived. They may not have sort of said, let's do it this way so, in inverted commas, normal fans don't know about it. But the main account seems to tweet everything and everything anyway, but this seemed to not go through it, which I did think it was strange myself, Matt, and it would be interesting to...
Maybe it's a lot more innocent than what we think. Maybe I think it probably is. It just felt a bit disappointing that there's, the way things are at the minute, there's a lot of people would like to... I think there's a lot of things that need putting to bed. I think there's a lot of questions that probably need answering. And Dean's always sort of fronted up, hasn't he, in the past, and kind of given people answers that they needed. And this just limits that opportunity, and I just found that a little bit disappointing. Richard Mills says Hoyle didn't promise a Q&A. Well, he did, Richard. He's put in his July board update, he's put, that's it for now, other than to thank you one time for your support. I couldn't hold any old Q&A sessions over the last 18 months due to the pandemic, but I plan to bring them back once the season is underway, probably from October. I look forward to seeing many of you then. I mean, that's quite clear to me that he's going to do a Q&A for fans. So he did. And do you know what? He may do one for different fans afterwards, and that will be fine. And maybe we're just sort of overreacting a little bit, but it just didn't sit well with me, Pos, to be honest. I just felt like somebody needed to say something, and if what I say triggers a Q&A which is more open, then great, brilliant, thank you, Huddersfield Town Football Club for doing it. And I think what we have to understand as well is what Huddersfield Town do in being open with the fans is very, very different to any football club in the country. I think the amount of access that Huddersfield fans get from Dean Hoyle is unprecedented, and it is probably too much, or has been too much in the past. I could not tell you another football club that will give you this access. Cosy probably would tell you that nobody in Spain would do this. I think, although they've got presidents, don't they, and things that have to sort of do it. But so, if Dean said at the start of the season, you know what, lads, I've done too much in the past. We're going to scale these back. We might do board updates. Then that's fine. I mean, that it's in line with what everyone else does. But from what I can see, he said, I'm going to do more Q&As, and then to sort of lock it away a little bit just felt a bit of a shame. But, hopefully by highlighting that, we do get the fans that don't get the opportunity to go to that will get another opportunity at another time. And I think it'd only be right by the football club to do that. And if they say then there's not going to be many more Q&As in the future, then that's fine. But just on this occasion, I just felt like it was a bit disappointing, Cosy.
Yeah, I don't have much to add, to be honest, Matt, compared to what you two guys have said that as well. I think, yeah, like in the past, I was always a Canal Side disciple back in the day when it was called that, and I went to all the Q&As, and I remember Dean fronting up quite a lot of times that season when he moved up. He got Simon Grayson. I think he did a Q&A pretty much straight away, and there were a lot of brickbats being thrown at him in that as well.
But remember David Wagner in the Millbridge and stuff like that. Was a fantastic night, that.
Yeah, obviously the famous ones and that as well. I remember seeing David Wagner again at Millstown and that as well. And but I think just at this time where we're at as a club, it's just there's so much that we want to know, and I think that as well. We don't accuse anyone of lying, but ensured are we just going to get them bundled into a little PDF like we see for the Altogether Town, and that I don't think that's enough really for me. And I'd like to think it would be nice, really, wouldn't it, if it were kind of broadcasted as tomorrow, the day after, or something as an HTTV. But I don't know. It's there's a lot of stuff. It's just not just even that. It's just like what's the share situations? The update on that is the Canal Side where we're at with that is all singing and dancing, wasn't it? When Dean kind of But
Yeah,
it was
I mean,
just the
I
Premier
mean the
League.
people. The people might ask the questions that people want to hear, and then that'd be good. If there was some kind
Yeah.
of gathering of that, and then they recorded it and played it out, even better. You know, I think a lot of people will be quite happy with that. And Stan in the comments, HTFC Stan says, "I don't mind as long as there's some sort of stream or video for others to watch the Q&A," and that'd be good. You know, that'd be quite
But it'd
good.
be
And
interesting.
maybe
Maybe
making
like,
maybe making a lot out of nothing. I don't know.
yeah, exactly. And but you don't, even for him, it's like, well, hang on a minute, Mark. Do you think your comments were out of order? Were you to bag a player? I'm fascinated to. Yeah, let's just hope the guys that are there on the night can ask, and the relayed back. Just hopefully more than just a few notes on a PDF the next day on the website. Let's hope we can get some video footage and stuff, because we want to kind of come out of that Q&A, don't we? Thinking we're heading in the right direction, even obviously at the league table we're not at the moment, but there's a lot of people at the moment I know have lost a bit of love for it all. They're not coming to the games, and they're doing other stuff with the Saturdays, and we don't want them to go, man.
No. Right. We need to finish quite soon. So I did actually ask for some pod questions. I think we were on about the World Cup, weren't we? We've got 5 games until the World Cup. How many wins? I was going to say, I think we need 3 wins minimum from that to stay in touch. You guys, how many wins do you reckon?
What do I think we need, or I think we'll get? Because that's two very different. I think, well, looking at who we've got to play, it's going to be tough. I can't, at the way that we're playing at the moment, I would be lucky to get 2, I think.
We've got QPR away, Sheffield United away, Millwall at home. Who else? Blackburn away.
It's not an easy run. It's not an easy run, that.
No,
we could be, if we're not careful, we could be almost out of it by then.
Right. Let's whiz through some of these questions. Twitter questions. So Huddersfield Town family say, did the reported bust-ups happen, or was it the rumour mill going overtime? If it did happen, could it be a good thing? Proves that they care and there is a passion. Saturday was better. Point in the road and a clean sheet is a positive when you are bottom. The only thing I've got really to add on that is that if you remember early, Mark Fotheringham was very adamant that he wanted aggression, didn't he, on the training ground. He wanted it to be competitive. He wanted to change the environment. He wanted it to be nasty. I'm not sure he wanted to, erect a UFC cage or anything like that, but he wants people to come in and fight for a place, doesn't he? And I don't think a face-to-face flashpoint, which is really what was reported, I don't think Mark Fotheringham would look on that as particularly a bad thing, to be honest. I think he would probably look on that in a positive way, that players care, players are passionate, and players are there to do a job. So I don't think that he would really look at it as a bad thing. And I think 5 minutes later, I think he'd be over it as well if there was an argument or sorts. He seems to be that sort of character to me. So I think, as always, we'll just have to wait and see how players react to it. I've not really got anything else to say on that one. You two?
No, not really for me.
We'll move on. Richard Wood says, has anyone mentioned any kind of time frame for Tino's return? Desperately needs quality, even if he can play 30 minutes. Glandular fever can be quite a nasty disease, doesn't it? So we've not heard
he's been pushing it a few times in the presser, Matt, and he just, might just gut feel again. He didn't say he won't be available till whatever, but I don't think we'll see him this side of the World Cup, mate.
Stephen Chicken says, in the first Back to the Future film, they know what time the lightning is going to hit the clock tower down to the minute. But for their purposes, wouldn't they need to nail it down to the exact second? I know it's their only option, but their confidence feels unfounded.
I think that's for a different podcast, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I think the problem with Stephen is he's looking at time as a relative framework there, rather than as more of a when rather than a where. So we'll move on from that one. But yes, it would actually need to be right to the very instant, wouldn't it? So yes, he's ruined the entire film and the series for everybody. Thanks for that, Stephen. Ollie Fisher, this is a good one, Cosy. Best food ever consumed at an away ground. I'm so tight, I never buy any, but anything you've bought?
Gillingham. I once had a pie at Gillingham, and it was like a full pie. Like you'd get to split into 4 for a Sunday dinner.
Nice.
Massive it was.
And you nailed it all.
Gillingham, to be fair. Oh, of course I did, yeah. I had about 8 pints. So I needed something to soak it up. So I'd say my pie at Gillingham was the best thing I've ever eaten.
Yeah, yesterday. I ordered a burger and chips, got a burger, £4.10 yesterday, but the chips weren't going to be ready for 5 minutes, and I'd already paid for them. So I asked for a refund, so I managed to give me a refund back, and drama. But the best Hartlepool United did the best hot dogs I've ever had.
Those hot dogs, they were massive, those, weren't they? They were absolutely huge. I remember those.
They were honestly, Hartlepool were amazing, mate. The biggest sausage I've ever put in my mouth is a Hartlepool United. So hopefully we'll never play them anytime soon. But yeah, I just remember that. And then
I actually remember those hot dogs being called something specific to
the rollover,
a player. No, they got nicknamed something to a specific player, which is probably a bit inappropriate for the podcast. But I'll tell you what, because last Sunday I went to Headingley, your stomping ground, to watch Jamaica and Ireland. And I was actually quite impressed that you could walk outside and order from the fish and chips, and they had gyros, they had fish and chips and all sorts outside. And my missus bought some fish and chips. They weren't great, but I was just quite impressed that it was a little bit more than your usual pie and burger and stuff. And I actually thought that was quite cool last week at Headingley. But let's have a go. Liam Cawthorne says, another 2 or 3 games with no win. Will we get rid? I'm not sure about that, Liam. Tom Lee's hit the buffers at both Leeds and Sheffield Wednesday after good starts at both clubs. Do you think he can come good again for us, says HTFC Dukes? I say yes. I think he's improved slightly since Fotheringham came in, actually, Lee. So I'm going to say yes. Very quickly, guys. Yes, no.
Yeah, I don't think he's a bad player. I think he's just dipped in form like many others at that moment.
Yeah. We're so missing his loan. He's out with Sinani, Colwell.
Jacob Peel says, do you see light at the end of the tunnel where performances are of a standard where we can compete with teams?
I've not seen it thus far.
Yes.
Very. I can't remember a game where I thought, oh, yeah, we've got something about us. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes you have them.
We do compete, don't we? We do compete with teams. It's whether we beat teams is convincingly. Yeah, convincingly is the other.
It's a long time since I can remember 15. I mean, yesterday we're all right, but 14 opening games where we've been, you can barely remember 1 or 2 decent performances. That's the worrying thing for me. And God, we started by
as Stephen Chicken wrote. Yeah, as Chicken wrote as well, every time we've beaten somebody, they've sacked the manager or they've been managerless. So, let's have a look.
Them 2 wins, I think. Have we won 2, 3, 2? I think they've missed 2 penalties in games that we've won and all. So.
John Broadley says, "Do you think?" John Broadley says, "Do you think town fans have been too quick to condemn Mark Fotheringham?" Yes.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Mike says, "Most fun at a home game this season without watching the football." Ooh, that's a tough one. I only go and watch the football.
I'll tell you what, after Preston, I park up on Great Northern Street, which is a. Anyone from Huddersfield will know that area, and there was a right argument going on between a lady of the night and a bloke. So I don't know what's going on there. That was quite funny trying to walk past that with a kid.
Was it Cosy warning about its cost of living increases again? I tell you what, I'm not so much a home game, but an away game at Fulham. We played when we lost 5-0 at Fulham a few years ago. I went to watch that, and we were quite high up at the back of the stand, and there was a boat race going on. There was a lot of rowing going on the Thames that you could just see because they were redoing that stand, so you could actually see into the Thames over. And there was quite a few rowing races going on, and the game was that shit, and we were that shit at that point. I stopped and watched the rowing for about 10 minutes. That was all right.
One thing I remember one incident, and I saw it in Benidorm last week, but because a guy set fire to his chest hair in a way at Charlton Athletic.
So it wasn't a chest wanker.
I don't know if you've ever been when it's ever happened near you, but it absolutely stings. It feels like you're going through smoking around Body Shop. And but someone did it in Benidorm last week on a stage, and I knew what would come in from that Charlton incident, so I just moved it. It stung. Why would you want to set fire to your chest there, man?
I think that's a great moment to end the podcast, isn't it? Let's just leave everybody with the thought, why would anybody ever burn their chest hair, singe their chest hair? That's it. Thanks for listening this week, and we'll be back again next week. Catch you soon.
There's a team that is dear to its followers. The colours are bright blue and white. team of renown, they're the pride of the town, and the game of football is their delight. And all the while upon the field of play, thousands loudly cheer them on the way. Often you can hear them say, who can beat the town today? And then the bells will ring so merrily, and every goal shall be a memory. So town, play up and bring that cup back to Huddersfield. So town, play up and bring the cup back to Huddersfield.